Okay, this next one was when he did something wrong. He broke a rule. I think he shouted at our helper. He was disrespectful to her. And I told him, Liam, I have to punish you because you broke a rule. And his reply to me, no, I don't want. I want to fix the rule. Hi everyone and welcome to another episode of The Experimental Parent with me, Jasmine. This week I wanted to do an episode on things my toddler told me and lessons I learned from them. So I wanted to do this episode because it just came to my mind one day really, because I have a habit of noting down very funny things that my toddler suddenly says, because I don't have a good memory and I want to note them down so that I can just come back to them one day and laugh about them. And I was looking through these notes one day and I was thinking, I think I can share this laughter with my listener and viewer community here and just let everyone have a good laugh also. But as I was scrolling through it, I also realized that, hey, you know, all these things that are so funny, right? They actually also teach me some important things and they help me realize some important things about myself and about children. So I decided to, repurpose all these notes that I've been taking about the funny things that my toddler says and turn it into an episode. Okay, so first one, and I got approval from my husband to disclose this. So once he said, once he was in the toilet and he was sitting on the toilet bowl and he was pooping, and we were all, waiting for him to be done. We were, from the dining table because it's so smelly in there, right? So he was just shouting this from the toilet to the dining room for all of us to hear, and he went, "My poo-poo so smelly. Daddy poo-poo also so smelly. He sit on the toilet bowl and poo-poo." Lesson I learned from this: children have no filter and they are genuine. I mean, they say the most embarrassing things and they really just say it in a very inappropriate circumstances sometimes, like in front of our friends. They will disclose all these very sensitive and inappropriate things, but it's very true, and if they say something they really mean it. So it goes the same also for compliments, okay? So now knowing that they can say these kind of things and be genuine about it, know also that when they compliment you, they really mean it too. So second one was an occasion where I was in the swimming pool with him, and it was a very cold day actually. There wasn't any sun that day, so the water was incredibly cold. And you have to know that I was in a normal swimsuit while he was in a thermal suit, okay? So I bought a thermal swimsuit for him, the kind that scuba divers wear. So I don't think he was really half as cold as I was. But so I was in the pool and I was whining away. I was like going, "Oh, mommy feels so cold," so really literally in that voice. And he looked at me for a while and he said, "You don't have to cry." And then I said, "But I feel so cold." And then he looked at me again, and then he, as if he was so exasperated with me, right? He's like, "Come, mommy." So he reached out his hand, "Come, mommy, stand up." and then I stood up, obviously I had to obey him, right? And then he took my hand and he walked me all the way to the other end of the pool, which I presume he thought was less cold, and hence he wanted to bring me there. So lesson I learned: what goes around comes around. How I treat him is how he treats me. So I see this as a little bit of like karma. Maybe some of the times where I was not very empathetic to his emotions and I just tell him not to cry, and when I tell him that he has to be strong, then I demand him to be strong, and like I say, like, "Stand up, Liam. Okay, come on. It's okay, you just slipped and fell. Stand up. Okay, you just give it a good rub. Let's go." So he probably learned from these occasions, and that was him doing it back to me in that swimming pool occasion. But still, I thought it was quite sweet and nice of him, like, to feel protected by your toddler son. Number 3 was an occasion where he was helping my husband to wear his socks. I don't recall how that came about, but I think it was just the time when we were leaving for somewhere, we were going to go out, and he was done wearing his socks, and then he saw his daddy reaching out for his socks in the socks drawer, and he offered to wear socks for daddy. And so his daddy, my husband, replied to him, "Oh, thank you, Liam, that's so kind of you." And his reply, "Last night you wear socks for me, right? You remember?" So the lesson? It's not true that toddlers don't remember anything. They remember everything. The good, the bad, and the heartwarming. That was actually a really sweet moment for me. And whether or not he realized and he intentionally meant to tell his daddy that, "Oh, remember you wore socks for me that time, and that's why this is me doing it back for you." I don't know whether he really was meaning to say that, but at least the way it came out just reminded me that it's very sweet. And if I fast forward, several decades down the road, is this going to also still be how sweet he is to us, helping his old father wear socks and say like, "Oh, remember when I was young, you helped me to do this." So it's a reminder for myself also to always be kind to my children, right? Regardless of what happens, how they turn out, to always be kind, because what comes around, even the good things. Come a day, he will also do that. Even if it's not for us, he will also be kind to others. That kindness passes on. Number 4 was an occasion where he was sitting next to his younger brother, and they were both having their breakfast, I think. And he was teaching his little brother to open his mouth to eat. So he said, "Didi, you need to open your mouth like a big dinosaur." And then after a while, his Didi was just staring at him or making some baby noise. And then he said, "Didi, you're not listening to me." So the lesson here, how you speak to the older siblings is how they will speak to the younger siblings. And this is true not only for this occasion where I noted it down. There were many other occasions also that the way he spoke to his brother, he was kind of like repeating how we either spoke to him before or how we spoke to his brother before. Like more recently, there was a time when we were in the car, and I was telling his younger brother that he needs to sit down and fasten his seatbelt. So it's the same thing. He repeated the same thing word for word in the same tone and under the same situation, the same scenario. So he knows what it means and how to apply it in the correct times. Even when we're disciplining our older children, we have to always be mindful that we speak in a respectful manner to them, so that they will speak respectfully to their younger siblings, to make sure that we're not always yelling at them, because then they will always be yelling to their younger siblings. That's their way of teaching them, because that's the way that they were taught. Now this next one is about sharing food. So it was at a time where we were at a restaurant, I think, and his daddy asked whether he could have try a little bit of his food. So my kid answered, "Okay, daddy, you take a little bit, yeah? Not too much, yeah?" And I recall in that instance, it wasn't just us, our family, there were more people, and I don't remember who, but somebody said, "Aiyo, why so selfish? Little bit only, ah." And my child was actually still talking, so he didn't hear what this relative commented on the side, and he was still talking, and he went on to say, "Later you eat too much and you vomit, yeah? Then you have to go hospital, you know." So the lesson here, that sometimes we just assume the worst of our children, right? Or we assume the worst of this child before waiting to hear the full story, or waiting long enough for the child to fully articulate themselves and say what they wanted to say. And more often than not, they're just repeating what we always tell them also. So I recall very vividly that this is always something I tell my child, right? I always tell him, "Okay, not too much, okay, just a little bit, yeah, because if you eat too much, then your stomach will explode, your stomach will expand too much, and then you'll vomit everything out, and then if it gets very bad, I have to take you to the hospital." So this is me saying this to my child all the time, and he's just repeating it. And this also ties back to one of the episodes that I did about communication, the ETLC of communication, and how we sometimes just assume what we think we know the meaning of what our children are saying without fully listening to them and not letting them finish the story. So this is a classic example. All he meant to say was don't take so much because otherwise you will fall sick and you will go to the hospital. So it was a very well-intended comment, but sometimes we only hear what we want to hear. Okay, this one was during bedtime one day when my kid from his room was like screaming his head off. I had already finished the story and I already said goodnight and I had left the room already. And then he was still screaming and yelling for me to come in. And so eventually when I went back in, I said, Liam, why are you screaming? Mommy told you that screaming and whining is not a nice boy voice, right? And his reply was, I'm not screaming anymore. I'm just talking to you. Lesson? Tone is everything. And that's so true about communication, right? Because when we talk about communication, only 7% is the words you actually say. 35% is tone of voice. So even though it was funny and quite shocking to me that he said something like that, and again, I don't know how aware he was when he said something like that. But yeah, that affirms how tone is everything and how you say it matters more than what you say. Okay, this next one was when he did something wrong. He broke a rule. I think he shouted at our helper. He was disrespectful to her. And I told him, Liam, I have to punish you because you broke a rule. And his reply to me, no, I don't want. I want to fix the rule. The lesson here? Well, maybe sometimes rules are not meant to be broken. They're meant to be fixed. I thought about it, and while it dumbfounded me when he said it and I didn't know what was the appropriate response to it, just because I felt that there was some truth to what he said, about fixing the rule. Okay, so if you broke it, then how do you fix it? How do you make it good again? Other than just punishing them and teaching them that you cannot break this rule again, they also need to kind of undo or repair the damage that they've caused, right? For example, in the case where he was rude and disrespectful to our helper, he's fixing the rule when he apologizes to her and does something or say something to make her feel better, right? So that she won't feel as hurt anymore. So in a way, yeah, he's fixing the rule. So quote of the day, if you broke the rule, fix it. The next thing, this example was actually also something that I shared in a prior episode about helping children to articulate what they really mean to say. So this was when he saw a complete stranger, a little girl, just cycling past him. And for some strange reason, he just said, I don't want her. I don't like her. So I told him, oh, but you don't know her, Liam. How do you dislike somebody you don't know? Do you mean to say that you're scared to talk to her? To which he nodded and he said, I'm scared to talk to her. Then I said to him, okay, Liam, you can tell me that you're scared to talk to her, but when you say I don't like or I don't want someone, it can make that person feel very hurt, okay? So the lesson of the day, we often teach our children that we shouldn't be judgmental, we shouldn't jump to conclusions, but sometimes do we judge and do we jump into conclusion ourselves without finding out more about someone? So him behaving that way and we say, oh, but you don't even know that person, how do you dislike somebody? Thinking back on ourselves, do we sometimes just see somebody and just because of the vibe or just because the way the person is dressed, the way the person speaks, the way the person interacts, even though you don't know that person personally, you just pass judgment and say, I don't like her. I don't know why, I just don't like her, just feeling. Do we do that sometimes? And the last one was a very recent one, which I earlier mentioned a little bit. We were in the car driving and both the children were buckled in their car seats and Titi was trying to get out of his car seat because now that he's 1+, he really wants to see the outside world and his car seat was still rear facing. So he was like trying to struggle out of his car seat and he was like whining and crying away. And my older kid said this to him, Titi, must wait until daddy drive finish, okay? Then he will carry you, yeah? So the lesson, not all our nagging at our older kids fall on deaf ears. So I'd like to think about it that way, that some of the nagging that we tell our children have not gone to waste, that they will pass it on to their younger children and they will help to become disciplinarians also, so that we don't always have to be the one nagging the younger kids too. And it's funny also that he remembers these lines and he uses them so appropriately. And I do hope that down the road, even the years to come, the things that we teach him, we tell him he has to do or that he cannot do, when his younger brother does them or doesn't do them, he will also help to put his little brother in his place, and their brotherhood will grow stronger together as a result. So are there funny things that your kids tell you that also cracks a laughter or even causes you to reflect and teaches you something deep about life? If you do, please share them with me. You can DM our Instagram, The Experimental Parent, and I'm looking forward to learn more from your children as well. Thanks for tuning in to The Experimental Parent. Remember, we are all in this together. So if you have a story, topic suggestion, or feedback you'd like to share, we'd love to hear from you. You can DM me on the show's Instagram, The Experimental Parent, or leave a comment here. If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to like or subscribe so you never miss out on future episodes. Your support means the world to us. So let us know, how was your experiment today?